you can't eat enough lipoic acid to achieve these types of effects. So all of these were done, all these trials were done using therapeutic doses of lipoic acid. And so let's show you kind of what food looks like so you can have a good idea of, here we're talking upwards of, 1,200 plus milligrams of lipoic acid a day. But here are your top foods. So you see a cup of cooked spinach has 3 milligrams of alpha lipoic acid. You can see kind of the next best thing really is red meat and organ meat at 1 to 2 milligrams for 3 ounces. So depending, if you ate 9 ounces of meat a few times a day, you might get 10 milligrams in total of lipoic acid from your meat. And you can see broccoli at, a cup cooked is 1 milligram, and then you get down into some of these others, and it goes all the way down to, you can see here, 0.4 for potatoes, and that's 1 medium baked potato. So you're not going to achieve this, anywhere close to this 300 plus, 300 to 1,200 milligram plus day therapeutic range. So food isn't going to cut it. And I say that because, look, I'm a huge advocate of food. I think everybody should be eating real food. I think everybody should be striving to accomplish great health through food first. But if you're after some of these research, what we just showed you in research, some of those benefits, you're not going to achieve that with food. You're going to have to go up a notch, if you will. And so let's talk about dosing and forms of lipoic acid and safety of supplementation. And so you can see here, ALA is considered a safe supplement without any adverse effects. One study supports the safety of the drug. An adult can take up to 2,400 without experiencing any harmful adverse effects. So that's a pretty high dose. I typically don't go that high in my practice. But again, this is one study saying that up to 2,400 milligrams should be okay in humans, adult humans, without any major side effects. Now, that being said, everybody's different. And I don't think we can base one study's conclusion on the entire globe, on the entire planet. So be aware there are some adverse effects. And you can see the most common adverse effects reported were headache, heartburn, nausea, and vomiting. And none of that's fatal, but at the same time, you don't want to struggle through headaches and heartburn all the time for the sake of trying to lower your blood sugar. There are other ways to do it. So if it bothers you, if taking lipoic acid, if this is you might reconsider. Don't suffer through the problems to try to achieve or lower the dose, and work with. Ideally, you want to work with a doctor who addresses nutrition, not a doctor not trained in nutrition, because those guys and gals they really won't be able to help you too much because they don't know anything about it. But work with somebody with nutritional background. You see, daily dose of 200 milligrams a day to 2,400 milligrams a day is deemed safe without significant adverse effects. However, there's no reported safe dose in children. So if you're trying to give this to your kids, there's not really been any major research studies on kids. So, just cautionary tale there. Is it dangerous? Probably not. But do you want to go 2,400 milligrams a day for your child? Probably not either. Like, again, work with a good doctor who understands nutrition and who'd be willing to monitor levels to see if it's something they need to do. And you see down here, and this is another study, safety evaluation of lipoic acid supplementation. And this was a systematic review and meta-analysis of the randomized placebo-controlled clinical studies done on humans. So again, this is a summarization of all the research studies done in people with dosage of lipoic acid. And so this was pulled from 71 clinical studies comprising 155 treatment arms, which included 4,749 subjects, with 2,558 subjects treated with ALA and 2,294 assigned to placebo. So they did a meta-analysis on all these folks, right? And what did they find? ALA was not associated with increased risk of any treatment emergent adverse event. In other words, they didn't find any real major problems with people taking the lipoic acid. And so then they did a subset analysis, and they also looked at people who smoke, people with existing cardiovascular disease or the presence of diabetes or pregnancy, people with neurological disorders, rheumatic disorders, as well as severe renal impairment or kidney impairment, and status of children and adolescents at baseline. And they didn't find any problems in those individuals either. So whether you have heart disease, whether you're pregnant, whether you have diabetic neuropathy, whether you have kidney disease, arguably the best review on all the clinical human trials done to date don't really show any major problems. So is it safe? I think it's pretty safe to say lipoic acid is pretty safe. I think the next question is, what's the dosing structure that people should consider? I think that depends on who you are. I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish or achieve. Ultimately, I think if you're trying to go higher doses of lipoic acid, you probably should work with a professional to kind of help guide you. But at the end of the day, I can just share my own personal clinical experience working with it. I regularly give people this amount. And this is typically under the auspice of we're trying to aid or support detoxification. Typically, in my practice, it's metal and mycotoxins are where we see good effects. That being said, I test everyone. Now, sometimes, even though somebody's not deficient in lipoic acid, I'll still support them when we have a mycotoxin or metal problem. But I'm not going to do it indefinitely. In other words, I'm not going to put them on this amount for years on end without monitoring them. I generally will monitor a person I'll monitor them through blood work every 6 months, but I will monitor them through conversation as well. And so the key here is it's safe to take it. You can take it. You're probably not going to get hurt. These are some of the symptoms you want to look out for. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to be the most intelligent about it, work with somebody who knows what they're doing and test your levels. Now, there are no great serum lab tests for lipoic acid that are commercially available. What we like to use, you've heard me talk about this if you've listened to me for any length of time, one of the best technologies to analyze lipoic acid is intracellular nutrient analysis. And what this type of testing does is it actually extrapolates your cells from your body, and then those cells are then stimulated to grow. So growth, and we measure that growth rate is measured, and then we get a baseline. So this is our baseline. So your growth rate of your cells is your baseline. Then we go back and repeat the test, only this time we give the cell whatever nutrient. In this case, we give the cell lipoic acid. And then we remeasure the growth rate. And if the growth rate improves dramatically, generally speaking, if we get a greater than 110% improvement, then what that indicates to us clinically is that your cells performed better, grew better, performed better, functioned better when we gave them lipoic acid. So this can be measured. If you're gonna do this, under guidelines of intelligence, I would say get it measured so that you can justify, how long you should take it, and whether or not you should take it, whether or not it would be beneficial. Because lipoic acid is an expensive supplement, and you don't just want to take it just because. Again, I always like to test, not guess. Let's justify the reasoning. That's the most common approach to taking this. Now, there's some arguments out there about what kind of the type, right? So what type of lipoic acid? And it's mixed. The science is not super clear on this. There's something called R form, which some Petri dish studies show better enhanced utilization or absorption. But there's also research studies that show that therapeutically, R form's not really any better, and there actually can be some drawbacks to it. Generally speaking, R form is more expensive. The other problem is all the research in humans is not done with R form. It's done with lactic acid, which is just basically lipoic acid. So I would say if you're looking at taking our form versus not, I don't think there's any huge, tremendous justification in coughing up the extra money for the R form, considering all the studies have been done on non-R form, and those studies are the ones that show the outcomes and the results and the benefits. That being said, the other thing is when you're taking high doses of lipoic acid, one of the nutrients you got to watch out for is biotin. So they compete with each other. So if you're taking high dose lipoic acid, know that they share the same the same entry mechanisms, and so they're going to compete for uptake. And so it's smart if you're using lipoic acid that you also add some biotin in to your supplementation regimen so as to not create a biotin deficiency. Remember, biotin deficiency can create problems with fat metabolism. It can create problems with your skin. It can cause hair loss. It can cause nail fragility. So you just want to be careful not to take so much lipoic acid for such a long period of time that you end up causing a biotin deficiency, and now you have another problem to deal with. Another reason why I like to test, because when you're testing, when you're testing for lipoic acid and you're using INA, you don't just test lipoic acid, you're also testing biotin among other things. So it's just smarter to be analytical in your approach. Okay, let's talk about one more aspect of lipoic acid, and that is what causes lipoic acid deficiency. Remember that your body can produce lipoic acid, so this is not an essential nutrient that you have to obtain from your diet, because you do have the ability to produce it chemically internally if you have adequate caprylic acid and cysteine. That being said, there are some things that can deplete it or cause your body to need more of it or utilize more of it. One of those is severe stress. What does stress do? Stress, in a sense, causes increases in free radicals, which basically increases the demand for lipoic acid, because what is one of its primary functions? It's in regenerating your antioxidants, your vitamin C, your CoQ10, your glutathione. We also know that the SAD diet, eating processed, ultra-processed foods, high carbohydrate diets that don't provide much nutrition, the diet itself also contributes to an increase in free radicals, which is going to increase your demand for lipoic acid to quench such problems. We also know that gluten-induced damage. So those of you who've read my book, follow me along for a while, know my thoughts about gluten. But gluten can cause tremendous inflammatory damage and thus increase the need for lipoic acid. But the other problem with gluten is that it damages the small intestine, and that damage can reduce your ability to absorb lipoic acid effectively from the food that you eat. Remember, lipoic acid generally, it's got a very, very short life cycle in the body. First of all, it's poorly absorbed, and then second of all, it's in and out of the body within about 5 hours. And this is just another reason why eating your way to high levels of lipoic acid, it's rate limiting. You can't eat enough to generate the quantity or the dosing structure to get some of the things that we were talking about in those human trials, because it leaves the body so quickly. And by the time you've ingested one meal, you're full, and you maybe got 2 to 5 of lipoic acid, and it's just or milligrams of lipoic acid, and then you have to wait another several hours before you eat that next meal. But gluten causes damage to the intestines that impairs absorption, right? So now you have a mechanism where the intestines are damaged and you can't get what's in your food either effectively, and so now you're just relying on what your body's making. And gluten causes that increased inflammation, which puts more demand on lipoic acid. And such is true of anything that causes increases in free radicals or that causes pressure or stress on your body. So if you have poor behavioral habits, smoking, lack of exercise, those are all additional factors, this including mold exposure, mycotoxin exposure, additional environmental factors that can contribute to the formation of free radicals that increase the demand of lipoic acid usage by your body to preserve your antioxidant status. So there you have it. Probably more than you ever knew you could learn about lipoic acid. Look, if you found this video helpful, I'd love to hear your comments below. If you've had success stories with lipoic acid, meaning you've taken it and it's improved or enhanced your life in some way, leave a comment below for the next viewers coming along. Maybe it encourages them to, to share in your victory by possibly joining you. Thanks so much for tuning into Dr. Osborne's Zone. Hope you have a fantastic day.